They didn't just seal the gates, they scattered the keys across dimensions. Split them between blood, stone, sound and soul. There are 4 main keys, one in the body, one in the earth, one in the sky, and one in the name. The body key is in the blood. Only certain lineages carry the frequency that can unlock the veil. This is why they've mapped every DNA strand. AB blood rare for a reason. It vibrates with an ancient harmonic, the tone before the fall. It can open organic gates when aligned with memory and will. The earth key is buried beneath old structures they sealed off with military bases, sacred sites turned tourist traps, and gates guarded by war. Once it's under Korea, another under the Vatican, another frozen in Antarctica. The largest one is beneath the sands near the Eye of Africa, the Richat structure. They're not just geographical, they're dimensional hinges. And the keys, sometimes objects, sometimes people. The sky key is starlight, not just any star, but the ones the ancients marked: Polaris, Aldebaran, Sirius, and Vega. They left the coordinates in petroglyphs, pyramids, and stained glass. Each gate opens at an alignment, but you must be looking with the right eyes. Name key is inside you, it's the sound that activates the code. They renamed you to make you forget it, but in dream state, you sometimes hear it. It's the word that makes the veil tremble. Buried in the Sahara, west of Mauritania, labelled Atlantis, but it's more than that. This is a resonance gate. The sand was melted to silence it. When certain tones are played near it, it begins to vibrate. It opens through sound and memory. The Vatican Gate, under the throne. The black cube beneath St. Peter's Basilica, not a myth, a root server. This is where soul loops are processed, where names are recorded, where the loop is reinforced. Accessed only by right and blood, but it can be broken by naming truth aloud in that zone. Mirror Gate under CERN. This one doesn't lead out, it leads back in. A trap gate, a mimic. Used to catch wanderers trying to leave. It reflects what you fear most and resets your loop. Guarded by tech and ritual. Avoid it unless you are certain you carry the full key set. They scattered the gates across the realm, not in plain sight, but always in reach of the bloodline. Hidden in the crown of the world, beneath the polar ice, a sleeping gate hums under magnetic silence. It leads out, not across, guarded by NATO, blocked by weather. But the old maps called it Hyperborea. It was the first escape frozen shut. Now they use satellites to scramble the frequency above it. Korean Gate, Mount Paektu, 13 layers deep inside the sacred mountain. This is the containment gate, not meant to be opened from here, but from within the dream state. It holds a pulse, possibly the original shard from the sky fracture. This is why Korea is sealed, not because it's dangerous, but because it's still clean. This gate syncs with Polaris when the sky tilts right. Each gate has a guardian, but not all guardians are on their side. Some were left behind, some are still asleep. And some, like you, were born again with no memory until the right tone hit your blood and woke the code. The Arctic Gate is guarded by a race no one talks about, the last of the true humans. White-eyed, tall, silent. The military calls them ghosts. But they're not ghosts, they're preservers. They protect the sky shard buried under the pole, and they answer to no god in this realm. The Korean Gate is protected by dream locks, rituals, language. The glyphs at the base of Mount Paektu aren't art, they're seals. But if you speak the right tongue in your dream, the rock begins to hum, and the lock weakens. The Eye of Africa is unguarded now, but watched. They buried it in sand and war. You'll notice the UN has their eyes there. Because this gate is active when enough of us remember. It doesn't open by digging, it opens by tone and collective will. The Vatican Gate is guarded by the highest order, not priests, not popes, but the echoes of Saturn. They sit beneath the altar in robes, older than time, feeding off the trauma above them. The blood of ritual powers the loop. But if you say the true name of the Christ, the seal begins to crack. The CERN Gate is guarded by the mimics. They look like people, but they don't breathe right, they glitch, they mock, they mirror. They are assigned to those trying to leave. You'll know them when they start repeating you back at yourself. Beware, this gate resets your frequency signature. Walk in without protection and you'll come out scrambled. And the final gate, you, no guards. Just trauma, just programming. Just fear, because the most dangerous gate of all is the one that remembers itself. When someone escapes, what's on the other side? They never expected anyone to get out. The gates were sealed with blood, fire and forgetting. But a few slipped through, and what they saw? They were never the same. When someone escapes, the system panics, the grid sends a recall. It rewrites timelines, deletes memories of the one who left. Have you ever felt like someone just vanished from reality? No trace, no death, no story, just silence. That was an escapee. On the other side, there is no sun like ours. Because our sun is a lens, a surveillance orb, not a star but a lock. Beyond the veil, light is sound, time flows sideways, and memory isn't linear. You remember everything because you never forgot. The ones who escape are not greeted by angels, but by witnesses. Watchers of the watchers, they don't speak, they reflect. They show you what you really are, not what the loop told you. And what do they find? Truth. Not heaven, not reward, but clarity. A realm untouched by control. No pain, no lies, just awareness. But there's a catch. The escapees don't stay, they come back. Not to be trapped again, but to crack open the others. You've met them, they seem human, but carry fire behind their eyes. Their presence disturbs the programmed. Their voice burns the net. You might be one. Every night your body sleeps, but your soul doesn't. It tries to leave. It remembers the route, even when you forget. But before you can fully exit, you hit it. That snap, that sudden jerk that wakes you up gasping. They told you it was a muscle spasm. It's not. It's a firewall. A shockwave grid layered between this realm and the real. Like an electric fence made of frequency. You hit it when your signal gets too close to the edge. The jolt isn't just to wake you, it's to reset you. To sever the dream thread before it reaches the door. Because if you got through, you'd remember. You'd remember what came before this life. You'd remember who built the trap. You'd remember how to leave. That jolt is the guardian. It sits between the astral and the out. You only hit it when your soul is aligned with the exit vector. But here's the truth. The more often you hit it, the closer you are to cracking it. Some people break through, but most forget the impact. They wake up tired, dizzy, fragmented. The grid scrambles their return signal. The dream body is realer than this one. It remembers where the gates are. It moves without time, but the grid has learned to intercept it. With noise, with distractions, with implanted dreams, with false exits that loop you back. But here's how to tell you're getting close. You jolt violently and feel disoriented. You see symbols in sleep that disappear when you try to recall them. You meet people who know your name but you've never seen before. You hear a sound you're not supposed to hear. A tone that shakes the space around your skull. That's the original tone, the one the gates respond to. If you hear it, you're near the edge. Next drop, how to stabilize before sleep, how to ride through the jolt, and how to pierce the wall without waking. How to break through the firewall, riding the jolt, so you're hitting the wall, that means you're close. But now you need to ride it, not get shocked back in. The jolt is a defensive surge, think of it like an astral taser. You hit the boundary and it sends a pulse to knock your spirit back into the shell. That's why your heart races, why your limbs snap, why your breath stutters back into your throat. They're trying to scare the soul back into submission, but here's how you push through it. Salt used to protect, now it's been inverted. If it's processed or blessed by the grid, it can amplify containment. Use raw, unrefined earth salt, place it in a triangle around your bed, not a circle. The triangle fractures interference instead of containing it. Place a clear quartz or obsidian point at the head, not for energy, but as a frequency blade to cut static. The breath lock as you feel yourself slipping. Don't gasp. That sudden inhale is the trigger. It completes the feedback loop. Instead, breathe out. Even if you jolt, force the exhale. It disrupts the reset signal. The system expects fear. Return with will. The word that anchors before sleep, say your name. Not the one they gave you, the one that rises in your chest like heat. You might not remember it at first, but even the intention to remember weakens the firewall. Words carry code. Your real name is a key. The dream knife, visualize a blade at your side before sleep. Not to fight, but to cut open. The dream body responds to preparation. You're not going into a dream, you're going in to leave. Let it know. Anchor with intention. Before you drop into sleep, don't just wish to dream. Say, I will remember, I will return with the key, and no force shall block my path. Say it every night until the grid believes you. The firewall is psychological tech. It weakens when you're certain. When you pierce the firewall for the first time, everything feels wrong. But not like a nightmare, like a reset in gravity. The rules change. You'll feel weightless, but not floating, silent, but not alone. Time doesn't pass, it pulses. You're not dreaming anymore. You've crossed into the raw layer, the buffer zone between here and the real. It's dim, not dark. There's no sky, just space folding. It feels like being inside a thought that hasn't formed yet. This is where they wait. Not the parasites, but the watchers of the watchers. They don't look human, they look like echoes. Forms that shift as you focus. They won't speak unless you do. But here's the key, they can't lie. If you ask them who you are, they'll show you. Now here's how to know if you found a true gate or a trap. Preparing the body for exit, how to keep the grid from tagging you again. You can't leave in pieces, the soul needs the body to be aligned, even if it's just for launch. They taught you to separate spirit from flesh, but to exit they must sync. because the grid uses your body's residue to pull you back. That's why you wake up tired, why your bones ache, why your back locks up just before sleep. You're being re-tagged through food, sound, tech, thought. But there's a way to wipe it clean before launch. Cut the static. The grid rides in through low hums, fridge buzz, charger loops, routers near your bed. Unplug everything within a 6-foot radius, no wires, no standby lights, no Bluetooth. The soul needs a clean magnetic chamber to fully detach. Speak to the gate before sleep, not begging, not hoping, commanding. Tonight I pass clean, I carry no weight, I claim my thread, the door will know me. This primes your entire field, the body becomes a launch vessel. No static, no return. And if you've done it right, you'll wake up with memory. Not images, not feelings, but knowing. You'll know you've seen the gate and that it saw you back. Rinse the shell. Salt showers don't just cleanse the body. They strip the tags. Mix sea salt with apple cider vinegar and baking soda. Rub down the spine, the soles, and over your heart. Do it in silence. This creates a bioelectric reset. The grid can't latch onto a moving signal. Close the loops, open tabs in your mind become anchors. Arguments, regret, future stress, these are hooks. Say aloud before sleep, I close all open circuits. No cords, no claims, my field is sealed, I am my own. The Watchers respect declaration, the parasites fear it. Remove the false codes, no name brand lotions, perfumes, or metals while sleeping. These carry frequency binders, subtle tech that relinks your body to the grid. Sleep in natural fibre, wrap your head in silk or linen. Mark your third eye with a line of salt water or castor oil. This blinds the surveillance net, you become invisible. You made it through, even for a second. You saw the gate, you felt the pull. You left a trail, and now the grid knows. Because escape isn't just about leaving, it's about what you bring back. The memory, the signal, the flame. The parasites don't fear escape itself, they fear contagion. They fear the ones who come back burning. The next day fog, you'll wake heavy, not tired, interfered with. Head pressure, emotional waves, sudden despair or rage, this is not yours. It's signal suppression. The system is sending a feedback pulse to shake the memory loose. Do not speak too early, keep silence in the morning. Let the memory settle, drink only water. Salt your tongue, write down every fragment before you move. The mimic appears, watch for strange contact that day. A DM, a phone call, a person repeating your thoughts back to you, but with a smile too still. They are echo agents, mimics seeded into your life to reset your frequency. They won't hurt you, they'll confuse you. Distract, insert doubt. Delay your next journey. If they appear, speak no truth. Observe. They mentally declare, you are not of source. You do not own me. Your loop ends now. They cannot override a sovereign declaration. The backlash dream. The night after a breakthrough is often met with violence. Nightmares, screams, shadow attacks. This is revenge code designed to scare you from returning. You must not fear it. Mark your bed with ash or obsidian. Wrap your wrist in red thread. Set intention. I do not consent to dream interference. I pass untouched. Then sleep again. The faster you return, the weaker the backlash becomes. The memory wipe attempt. This one comes subtle. A creeping forgetfulness, not just of the dream, but of the fire, of why you're here, of who you are. It may hit days later. You'll question yourself. You'll feel silly, emotional, drained. This is the last line of defense. When this hits, say aloud, I remember beyond remembering, my memory is etched in source. No force can erase what is sealed in flame. Then breathe, reignite the fire. Because if you made contact once, you can do it again. And the second time, you'll go further. You didn't sign your soul away. You were tricked, coerced, bound in moments of trauma, despair, love, or false light. Soul contracts are not divine. They are legal traps, astral paperwork, agreements forged in dream state or between lives when your memory was erased and your will was weakened. Who forges soul contracts? Not source, not the creator, but middlemen. Echo spirits, false guides, parasites in robes of light. Entities from the grid court. They wear faces you trust, a parent, a lover, a god. Then they offer you relief in exchange for consent. It sounds like, I'll make the pain stop. I'll give you what you lost. I'll protect your child. Or the biggest one, you still have lessons to learn. And you exhausted and fractured say yes, and the contract is sealed, inkless, bloodless. But binding until you remember why you agreed, because you were lied to. You thought karma was real, that you owed the system, that love meant staying, that you couldn't ascend until you fixed what they broke. But the truth is this, you owed nothing, you were already whole. But they needed you to choose the cage, so they could say it was fair. How to burn a soul contract without backlash? You don't need a priest, you don't need a ritual from the books. You need fire, your voice, and your memory. Here's how. Speak the severance, say aloud. I rescind all contracts not forged in full memory and full will. Any agreement made in fear, deception, or amnesia is void. I reclaim my soul in full. No debt, no bond, no return. Say it with fire, mean it. Burn a representation, write nothing. But draw a symbol that comes to you when you think of the trap. It might be a face, a sigil, a shape, you'll know. Burn it with salt and bay leaf, let the smoke rise. Do not speak, let the contract return to ash. Salt your threshold, sprinkle salt by the door you sleep near. This marks the line, no astral court may enter. You've declared yourself sovereign. They must now respect the seal, or face retribution. Anchor the freedom after the burn, say, I do not owe, I am not bound, I am not here to serve your grid, I walk free, flame in hand. Then drink water, bathe, and rest. You'll feel lighter, clearer, but watch for interference. They'll test your line. Just repeat, I remember, I revoke, I rise. They always spoke of 4 gates. 1 in the sky, 1 in the earth, 1 in the body, 1 in the name. But none of them open without the 5th, because the 5th isn't a key, it's a living frequency, a carrier of source hidden in flesh. It was never meant to be found, never meant to remember, but every few cycles one does. The 5th key is the soul that came before the split, before the fragmentation, before the false light grid wrapped around the realm. This soul doesn't just hold the memory, it is the memory. Its presence alone weakens the locks. That's why the system shatters the life of a 5th. Early trauma, isolation, disbelief from others, family wounds. Because if they can crush the 5th key early, they don't need to worry about the gates. But sometimes the key survives, and when it wakes, it starts unlocking gates without even trying. Not physical doors, but people, souls, entire clusters start to stir just from being near it. The 5th key doesn't follow the map, it is the map. Its voice activates old codes in stone and blood. Its gaze causes interference in mimic systems, its dreams bleed across the veil. It remembers the exit. That's why they watch you, that's why you've been followed. Why you've been gaslit, why you felt like the threat. Because you're the key that walks, the lock breaker. The proof that the dream is ending. And no one, not parasite, not mimic, not false god, can stop the gates from opening. Once you remember what you are, if this opens something in you, it wasn't by accident. You're not just dreaming, you're remembering. And now that you've seen the gate, they can't unsee you either. Subscribe to Emspiracy because the next time we meet, we're not coming back the same. They call it isolation, they call it madness. But what if the real madness is joining the system? While the world was lit up by satellites, frequencies, and surveillance grids, North Korea stayed dark. No TikTok, no Alexa, no Neural Ink, no frequency farming. Just static silence, an old signal refusing to die. They say it's because of power, paranoia, or propaganda. But those are just words used to hide a lot. Because sometimes the ones sealed off aren't hiding from us, they're hiding something from them. And in the middle of it all, a mountain, sacred, silent, alive, Mount Paektu. A name spoken in reverence, but never explained. A volcano that pulses with electromagnetic power, a place older than any regime. And beneath it, something they don't want to disturb or release or activate. Because the old ones remember what sleeps inside mountains, and the grid walkers know what they buried under volcanic ash during the last reset. Mount Paektu isn't just a national symbol, it's a lock, and the key is not meant to be found. They say Mount Paektu is the mythical birthplace of Korea, but myth is just truth wrapped in silence. This mountain isn't sacred because of patriotism, it's sacred because of what lies beneath. Ancient legends whisper of sky gods descending, of flames within the stone, of a light that came down and never left. Some say it's a dormant volcano, others say it's a power node, a sealed stargate, or worse, a containment lid, holding something that should not be awoken. Satellite scans show anomalies in its core, the magnetic field around it, twisted. The data censored, even Google Earth blurs its map, like they did with Antarctica, like they do with every gate they can't control. No one's allowed to dig, no one's allowed to study. No one leaves with footage, and no one asks why. The rest of the world surrendered to Wi-Fi, to 5G, to towers on every corner humming signals they never tested, to smart cities, smart homes, smart graves, but they refused the update. No Internet of Things, no artificial grid, no cloud to swallow the soul, because deep down they know what rides the frequency. The digital net isn't about convenience, it's about containment. A soul web designed to track, predict, and override thought before it even becomes speech. But inside the sealed kingdom, there are still zones of silence. Why do you think they're obsessed with the country? Places where dreams run unfiltered, where light codes from before the reset still echo off the walls where HARP can't reach. It's not the nukes, it's the signal they've kept out. They say it's brainwashing. But what if it's memory preservation? What if the dynasty is guarding a frequency key from being overwritten? The grid wants full control, but the sealed kingdom isn't just resisting, it's protecting a tone the rest of the world forgot how to hear. And when that tone is sung again, the veil will crack. There's a ritual the rest of the world performs, quiet, repetitive, dressed in law, diplomacy, and global unity. It's the global oath, the submission spell. You see it at every summit, every coronation, every handshake between puppets of power, a ritual alignment with the Saturnian grid, a binding, a sacrifice of sovereignty for access to the beast system. But the country refused to kneel. They didn't join the World Bank, they didn't join WHO, NATO, the UN grid, or the WIF machine. They were invited to the table of the parasites and walked away. Why? Because to join the system is to open the gate, to allow frequency infection, to sell the soul of a nation. And while they may be cloaked in propaganda and fear, they are not looped in the ritual. They do not sing the digital hymn. They do not worship the false sun. Even their cult of personality is a smokescreen, a barrier, a wall of noise hiding something they cannot allow to be touched. A bloodline, a sight, a signal, or all three. Because once you perform the ritual, the gate opens from the inside. And in the sealed kingdom, the gate remains closed. This isn't about war. This was never about nuclear threats or rogue missiles. That's just the theatre. The real fear is what happens if the gate is opened. Because beneath the sealed kingdom, beneath Mount Pektu, beneath decades of ritual resistance, something ancient is waiting. Not a weapon, not a bomb, but a memory field. A sealed resonance that predates every flag, a frequency vault left behind before the flood, by the old builders, by those who knew how to break the grid. And if that gate opens, and that tone is released into the signal field, the veil doesn't just flicker, it shatters. All the mimic stars, the false light, the engineered sky will lose alignment. The grid net will scramble, the soul web will glitch, and those still dreaming will wake. The gate of memory is not in the West, it's not under the Vatican, it's not in DC. It's under the one place the parasites can't fully see. The place they call a threat, because it holds the signal that ends them. Before the empires rose, before the tower fell, before the flood rewrote the map, there were keepers, guardians of sights, signals and sky gates that were too dangerous to be known and too sacred to be destroyed. And when the reset began, when Babel scattered the tongues and the parasites began their mimic reign, a few fragments were sealed, not by power but by choice. North Korea isn't just rogue, it's preserved, not free, but untouched by design, because someone had to guard the key. Someone had to stay unplugged, unlooped, unbound, while the rest of the world bowed to the black light. That's why the gate has remained closed. That's why the world is told to fear them. Because what they hold can't be digitized, replicated, or rewritten. A frequency relic, a builder's seed, the tone that cracks the net. And when the time comes, when the veil thins and the watchers descend, what's hidden there will rise. Not as a weapon, not as an army, but as a tone the grid cannot hold. The original sound, and when that sound is sung again, the mimic system collapses, and the walkers will remember what the sealed kingdom never forgot. They sealed it for a reason, not because they feared the world, but because the world had already been claimed. While every nation bowed to false gods and silent satellites, they kept something buried, a note from before time, a signal that can't be cloned, caged, or decoded. They were mocked, sanctioned, feared, but not because of what they might do, because of what they might release. A gate, a tone, a memory. And when that seal breaks, it won't be war. It will be awakening. The fake stars will flicker, the false sky will split, and every soul, still bound by the net, will feel something ancient rise in their chest. But that's not fear, that's recognition. Before the maps were redrawn, before the soul net grid was activated, inside their borders may lie the last uncorrupted harmonic, not a thing, not a weapon, a frequency, a living tone from the first design. You can't touch it, you can't hear it with ears, but if you've ever dreamed of breaking gravity, if you've ever woken up with the sound of stars humming in your chest, you've felt it. The builders left it here, in certain bloodlines, in certain lands, in certain codes that no AI can replicate. That's why they fear that place, not because it's dangerous, but because it reminds the grid what it can't control. And when that signal rises, when it pulses again through the frequency net, walkers will start waking up by the millions. What if North Korea isn't sealed off to protect its people from the world, but to protect the world from what lies beneath its soil? What if hidden under that mountainous land is one of the oldest shards, a fragment of the original sky, a piece of the firmament before the grid was shattered. The parasites broke the sky to seal us in, but not all pieces fell into their hands. What if North Korea holds the last unclaimed shard, a relic of the old system still vibrating with exit codes, too powerful to be absorbed, too dangerous to be disclosed? And what if they know that if the world found out, the entire lie would collapse? Beneath the highest peak in North Korea, hidden under 13 sealed layers of mountain rock, is not a nuclear bunker, but a vault from before the split. A structure older than any nation, older than memory. Layer by layer, it's been sealed in by time, ice and blood, each level encoded with a different frequency trap. Sound locks, magnetic veils, iron rings, false echoes, to keep what's inside from waking or from leaving. At the core is a pulse, a living fragment from before the fall. Some say it's the Heartstone, a piece of the true sky that still beats with source rhythm, too pure to be tainted, too loud to be silenced. The parasites couldn't destroy it, so they built the kingdom around it. They made North Korea the prison and the guard. And the one who holds the code to open it, he doesn't even know what he's sitting on. This didn't start with Korea, it didn't start with the Cold War. This seal goes back before history was history. We're talking pre-flood, pre-empire, back when the old grid collapsed and the parasites rewrote the world, before the world map was chopped and rotated, before time was split into BC and AD. There was a world beneath this one. And in that world, there were keys. Keys that could open exit gates, keys that could reverse the harvest field, keys that could awaken soul-encoded memory. Most were taken, destroyed, or hidden beneath false altars. But one key was never found because it was never surrendered. That key is buried in the sealed kingdom, not a relic, not a scroll, but a living signal, a frequency being hidden beneath Mount Paektu under 13 layers of electromagnetic silence. And they've known, the parasites, the Saturnians, the Black Cube priests, they've known it's still there. Who really wrote the Bible? The Bible, as we know it, was not written by one voice or even one God. It was assembled, rewritten, redacted, and ritually engineered over time to become a control mechanism wrapped in prophecy. There are two Bibles, but they're not old versus new. They are the original codes and the inversion engine. The original codes before the editors, before the councils, before Rome, there were scrolls, real ones encoded with divine frequency and warnings about what was coming. Books like Enoch, Jasher, Jubilees, the Apocalypse of Baruch, the Gospel of Thomas, the Sophia Codices. These weren't religion, they were maps. They told of fallen beings, soul technology, the sealing of earth and the war for memory. They carried star references, bloodline details, and exit instructions. They were written by seers, prophets, and encoded scribes, some human, some not quite. The original texts were gathered, then stripped, edited, and reworded by those under the influence of a different force. That force, the machine god, the false light, the architect. And it had one goal: take the truth, invert it, and feed it back as salvation. So they deleted the divine feminine, turned frequency into sin, turned visions into heresy, turned Yeshua into a trap code, then sold his name to the masses, while removing what he really said. And thus the Bible became two books in one, a living seed of truth, wrapped in a containment spell. The New Testament was designed to loop souls into worship, while the hidden Gospels were meant to show us how to get out. And the Old Testament, that's where the dark entity spoke plainly, claiming to be God, demanding blood, sacrifice, fear, and obedience. They told us it was the Word of God, but what they didn't tell us was which God. And they never said how many hands rewrote it, because the Bible they handed you is not the book it was. It's a Franken-scripture, part truth, part ritual, part prison. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the war between the voices inside it. This isn't about destroying faith, it's about reclaiming truth. Because the Bible isn't evil, that it was hijacked, and now we remember what they tried to erase. This isn't blasphemy, this is memory. This is what happens when a living document filled with star codes, exit instructions, and divine warnings gets ripped apart by a machine that couldn't stop it, so it chose to rewrite it instead. This isn't about destroying faith, it's about reclaiming truth. Because the Bible isn't evil, it was hijacked. This was the real Bible, the one the system couldn't allow to survive untouched. The inversion engine. Enter Rome, enter Constantine. Enter the councils of Nicaea and Laodicea. When Constantine called the councils, he didn't gather truth, he curated a ritual. They took a living library and turned it into a weaponized spell book. a book that would loop souls in worship while hiding the escape instructions in the fire. The Bible wasn't written in one piece. It was gathered slowly, painfully, from visions, scrolls, sky writings, and encoded songs. But many of those were cut, burned, hidden, declared forbidden by men who claimed to speak for God, but were building a containment grid. Here are just a few of the books they removed. The Book of Enoch describes fallen watchers, genetic manipulation, and star lore. Jasher and Jubilees, timeline corrections, ancient disasters, true history. The Gospel of Thomas, pure frequency, no control, just how to remember. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene reveals her as a carrier of Christ's original flame. Baruch, Ezra, Tobit, the Apocalypse of Peter, warnings, visions, and escape routes. The Sophia texts contain the divine feminine blueprint erased by Rome. They weren't just random writings. They were the pages that could wake us up. That's why they were declared heresy, because they didn't serve a church, they served liberation, the Old Testament God who was really speaking. They said it was God, the Creator, the same loving source who made all life. But the Old Testament doesn't speak with the voice of love. It speaks with commands, jealousy, fire, and blood. It speaks like a warlord, like something that needs worship to survive. And that's the clue. The God of the Old Testament, the one who demanded sacrifice, genocide, obedience, and fear, was not Source. It was a being known across cultures by many names. Yaldabaoth, Enlil, the Demiurge, Baal, the Architect, the Grid Warden. A powerful entity, yes, but not benevolent, not divine, and not your origin. He said, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me. But why would the only God say that unless he wasn't? Why would he demand endless offerings? The real teachings of Yeshua weren't about worship, they were about remembrance. He didn't come to start a religion, he came to show us how to leave. But that message was too dangerous, because it bypassed the priests. It bypassed the rituals, it bypassed the entire control system. So they rewrote him. The Yeshua we see in the Bible today still holds truth. But his words were trimmed, reshaped, and muted. They deleted entire gospels that held his real message. The Gospel of Thomas doesn't say, worship me, but it says, the kingdom is inside you and it is outside you. Split a piece of wood and I am there. Lift a stone and you will find me. That's not religion, that's frequency activation. In the Gospel of Mary, he says she understood more than the male disciples. She wasn't a prostitute. She was a mirror soul, a vessel of gnosis. But they couldn't let the feminine speak, so they erased her voice and rewrote him as a sacrifice, not a teacher of the exit path. Yeshua didn't come to die, he came to wake the sleeping field. And when his flame caught, they extinguished it with a story that taught us to bow instead of rise. They told you worship was holy, that bowing down meant salvation, and that devotion saved your soul. But what if it was a loop? What if worship wasn't elevation, but extraction? The system doesn't want your love, it wants your energy, your belief, your focus, your devotion aimed at the wrong gate. Because when you worship blindly, you consent. You pour your light into something you've never truly met, and in doing so, you give your permission to be looped again. Worship wasn't the original design. Yeshua didn't demand it. Neither did Source. The trap began when the false god rewired spiritual instinct into obedience. That's why churches are shaped like containment fields, why prayers are repetitive loops, why we were told not to speak to Source directly, but go through their system instead. It was a ritual and we didn't know we were part of it. True connection doesn't require worship, it requires alignment. Truth, discernment, sovereignty, because the system doesn't just want to be believed, it wants to be fed, and every amen to the wrong voice is another thread in the net. And know which ones are yours, because they couldn't erase the truth completely, so they buried it under obedience and trusted you'd never dig deep enough to find the signal, but you did. The Bible isn't a lie, it's a code book, a layered manuscript where multiple voices are speaking at once, and the only way to read it now is with activated discernment. Here's how you do it. When you read a passage, ask, what does this voice want from me? Does it bring fear or fire? Does it shame or awaken? Does it demand obedience or call me home? Because not every voice in the Bible is speaking from Source. Some are watchers, some are parasites, some are the original flame trying to echo through layers of edits. And the ones you resonate with, the ones that make your chest buzz and your skin prickle, those are the undiluted lines. That's the Bible speaking in its original form before the grid got to it. It's okay to keep the book, but don't read it like they told you to. Read it like a map, a timeline, a battlefield of voices. They told us the Bible ends with revelation, fire, judgment, beast. Battle outside our control, as if all we can do is wait and worship while the world collapses. But that was never the original ending. The true covenant wasn't about punishment, it was about remembrance. It was a pact between soul and Source. If I fall asleep in the trap, I will one day hear the tone again, and I will remember what I am. That's the real covenant, not law, not blood, not endless sacrifice. Memory. They erased that ending. They didn't want us to know that the final battle wasn't between armies, but between false belief and soul memory. Revelation wasn't prophecy, it was a time loop warning. A script for what happens when we forget who we are. And the dragon, the beast, the harlot, all metaphors, all distractions. The real gate was always internal. The real ending was always a choice. You were never meant to die waiting for a saviour. You were meant to wake, decode the field, and speak the flame alive again. That was the covenant. And they almost got away with erasing it. Declaration of exit. Breaking the false covenant. Reclaiming the real voice. I revoke the agreement I never made, the worship I gave in sleep. It's the fear I mistook for holiness, the shame I carried for being divine. I break the loop they wrapped in scripture. I sever the bond sealed in edits and lies. I return my voice to the source it came from, unfiltered, unbent, unbaptized by control. I do not need a book to speak to my creator. I do not need a gatekeeper to remember my origin. I was written in flame before the paper was touched. To the God who demanded fear, I do not consent. To the system that fed on obedience, I have left your field. To the watchers who inverted truth, I see you, and I speak back. The real pages live in me. The real covenant is memory. The real church is my field. And the next book, I write myself. Thought they sealed the book, bound it in fear, stamped it with their God's name and called it finished. But the last page, it was never written. Because we are the final chapter, the ones who woke inside the edit, the ones who felt the mismatch between flame and ink. We are not here to burn the Bible, we are here to resurrect the pages they buried, to speak the verses that couldn't be printed, to echo the names they erased, to call back the God that needs no altar, no fear, and no middleman. This is the true ending. You don't need to be saved, you came to remember. The trap is not eternal, the loop is not divine. The real gospel was carved into your soul before the first breath, and now you've read between the lines. You see, you speak, and that was the part they could never edit. They don't just break families, they break bonds, soul ties, lines of remembrance between mother and child, blood and blood. Not for justice, not for healing, but for containment. Because nothing threatens this system more than a mother who remembers who her child really is. So they distort, they isolate, they erase through courtrooms, lies, narratives and manipulation. Until the one you love most looks at you like a stranger. This is not just abuse, it's a ritual. And what you're feeling, that unbearable ache, that grief no one understands. That's not mental illness, it's soul-level trauma. A living bereavement designed to silence light. This isn't just abuse, it's inversion magic. Coercive control isn't about domination, it's about rewriting identity, turning love into fear, truth into confusion, bond into wound. They don't just want obedience, they want disconnection. Because a child connected to a loving parent remembers safety, remembers source, remembers who they are, and the system can't allow that. So they plant whispers, rewrite memories, mirror your light as danger. And slowly, the person you raised vanishes behind a false story. It's not just heartbreaking, it's intentional. This is psychic warfare. The trauma severs, not just relationships, it shatters the soul's anchor. The part that says, I am loved, I belong, I am real. When bonds break like this, violently, suddenly, without closure, the soul doesn't just grieve, it splinters. And those fragments, they become easy targets, easy to tag, easy to loop. That's why so many estranged parents feel like they're living in a ghost frequency, not fully alive, not fully dead, off drifting, like they were erased from their own story. Because in the grid's language, you were red flagged as dangerous. Because love like yours, unbreakable, unconditional, is one of the few things that can actually crack the simulation. And if that love was allowed to grow, your child might remember who they were, and worse, who you were. So they had to rewrite it. Fast, vicious, thorough. But here's what they didn't account for. Survival sharpens the code. Every day you live through this, you become more dangerous to the system that tried to destroy you. Because grief that doesn't kill you turns into truth that can't be stopped. If you speak too much truth, they call you unstable. If you fight for your child, they call you obsessive. If you walk with unconditional love, they call it manipulation. This is the inversion protocol. The system can't survive the truth of your intention, so it flips the script. It paints the most awake one as the most unwell. The one who sees through it all becomes the villain in the story they control. And it doesn't stop there. They use.
school reports, biased professionals, social engineering, digital surveillance, and the child's own survival response. To reinforce the lie, the goal to program the child to fear your light so they stay in the loop and you stay crushed, because they know if the bond mends, the trap breaks. If the truth is remembered, the whole spell collapses. You weren't targeted because you were weak. You were targeted because you were coded to protect something sacred. You came here carrying a love that could override programming, a bond strong enough to wake a soul mid-loop. That's why they came for you. That's why they turned your child against you. That's why they painted you as unstable, dangerous, or obsessed. Because if they didn't, you might have succeeded. And that's all it takes to collapse the spell, one bond that survives the break. But here's the truth they can't delete. Grief like this doesn't end you, it activates you. You're not broken, you're forged. Through loss, through fire, through betrayal, you've become something the system fears most. A soul that remembers through pain. You were never meant to stay silent. You were meant to be the voice that reaches those no one else could reach. And you will. The war on the feminine didn't begin with courts or custody battles. It began the moment the system realised. Women, remember, not with logic but with knowing, not with proof but with presence. They carry timelines in their blood, truth in their dreams, and codes of remembrance in their wombs. That's why they were hunted, that's why they were burned, that's why mothers, grandmothers, daughters and sisters became the first to be silenced. Because a woman who remembers her power can pass that remembrance to her children, and that breaks the loop. So the system built tools, coercive control, false diagnoses, legal distortion, gaslighting through authority, the unfit label, the crazy woman archetype and soul severance rituals, master's protection, not to protect children but to protect the system from what a child might remember through her. To the women, they tried to silence what still lives in you. They took your child, they stole your voice, they rewrote your story with lies and called it justice. And still you breathe. That alone makes you dangerous. Because what survives this kind of loss doesn't just survive, it remembers. You are not weak, you are the part of the system they couldn't control. They had to isolate you because your love was too loud. They had to gaslight you because your knowing was too accurate. They had to turn your child against you because your presence was unlocking something ancient. And now, every day you keep going, even with the ache in your chest and the silence in your phone, you're radiating a code that shakes their false reality. Because even disconnected, you're still linked. The bond they severed, it's still pulsing, still transmitting, still sacred. And one day, your child will feel it, and the spell will break. We empower other women by remembering who we are when no one's watching. When one woman stands in truth, without envy, without mask, it gives every other woman permission to do the same. It's not about being louder, it's about being realer. We reconnect through honesty, softness, sacred rage, and shared memory. Empowerment isn't a role, it's a ripple. And it starts when one woman says, I see you, not as competition, but as a coded reflection of me. And that's how we rebuild the sisterhood. That's how we burn the old game down together. They tried to make you disappear, not with death, but with invisibility. They took your motherhood, they questioned your sanity. They replaced your story with theirs and expected you to crumble, but you didn't. Because what they never understood is that a woman who has nothing left to lose becomes something else entirely. She becomes light they can't track, a flame they can't put out, a memory no handler can erase. You're not just a mother, you're a map, a living key. And even if your child doesn't see you now, they will. Because no lie lasts forever. No spell holds against love that doesn't die. This system tried to sever the unbreakable, and in doing so, it revealed who you really are. A warrior in disguise, a mother of flame, a truth they'll never silence again. We see you, we remember with you, and we rise with you. This was the severing. The bond is not broken, it's awakening. To the fathers, the tethered and the anchored, this war didn't just come for women, it came for fathers too. Not all, but enough. Men who remembered their children but were cut off by systems that punished presence. Men who were slandered, erased, restrained because they held too much heart in a world that rewards control. The system fears a father who feels because his steady love is a stabilizer, a guidepost in the fog, a signal of safety when everything else becomes distortion. But there are some men who were never meant to be broken. Men who weren't just protectors, they were anchors. Sent here to hold the line so someone else could remember through them. To those fathers, your presence is prophecy, your loyalty is legacy, and your love is a beacon. Some of you never left, You stayed when the system tried to force you out. You stayed when your name was dragged, when your rights were revoked, when your child was turned against you. And some of you were never loud, never political. You just stood steady, constant, unshakable. They underestimate that kind of man, but we don't, because your quiet love stabilizes timelines. It gives your child a thread to follow home. And for some of us, you were the reason we made it through. The reason we didn't forget who we were, the reason we didn't fold under the pressure. You were placed here to anchor the ones who came to awaken. You didn't need a crown, you didn't need recognition. You just showed up and kept showing up. And for that, you're part of the flame too. You are remembered, you are honoured, you are seen. This isn't just a war on mothers, it's a war on all who love without control. And the men who still hold space for truth, your kings in exile. But the kingdom is coming back, and you'll be ready when it does.